There are inventions that are so small you barely notice them. No flashy design, no complicated technology. But when they're gone, you suddenly wonder, how did the world work before they were invented? In this video, we'll count down 10 small inventions that quietly solved big problems. Simple things we use every day, but there's actually a bigger story behind them. Before we start, please like this video and subscribe. It means a lot to us, content creators. Thank you. And now let's begin. Number 10. An invention that we almost touch every day but rarely notice. Velcro. Just two pieces of fabric, one with tiny hooks and one with soft loops. When you put them together, they stick instantly. When you pull them apart, they come off easily. It's that simple. But behind that simple mechanism, there's actually a solution to a problem that many different industries have been dealing with for a long time. Before Velcro was invented, many fastening systems came with their own hassles. Buttons were slow. Zippers could get stuck or break. Laces would loosen. And in situations where you need to move quickly, that's a big problem. The idea began in 1941 when Swiss engineer Georges de Mestral noticed burrs clinging to his dog's fur during an Alps walk. Rather than ignore them, he studied them closely. Under the microscope, he saw hundreds of tiny hooks clinging to the fibers of fabric and hair. That's where the concept began. He copied the design from nature and turned it into a practical fastening system. Eventually, it was used in medical braces, blood pressure cuffs, military gear, rescue equipment, and even in NASA's space missions to keep tools from floating in zero gravity. But perhaps its most important contribution is that it made life easier for ordinary people. For the child putting on shoes, for the patient who has difficulty moving, for the nurse who needs to act quickly, for anyone who needs a fast, simple, and reliable grip. No battery, no electronics, no complicated mechanism, just one press and it holds instantly. Sometimes, the biggest solutions don't have to look advanced. Number 9, 3-point seatbelt. One of the simplest things inside a car, but it's also one of the most important when it comes to road safety. It's not complicated, it's not electronic, it doesn't have sensors or apps. One strap on the shoulder and one on the lower body, and a buckle that locks in with a click. But behind this simple design, there's a big change in how it protects the person inside the vehicle. In the early days of cars, there was no standard seatbelt yet. Unlike today, some only had a simple lap belt wrapped around the waist. It served a purpose, but it was limited. In a collision, it does prevent the body from being thrown out, but the upper part of the body still moves forward. That's where more serious injuries happen. Everything changed when the 3-point seatbelt was developed in Sweden during the development of modern vehicle safety systems. The engineer Niels Bohlin, while working at Volvo, developed a better design. Instead of just one part holding the body, he made it with two main support points, the shoulder and the hips. This way, the force is distributed more evenly during sudden braking or a crash. It's not just one part of the body that absorbs the impact, but stronger parts like the chest and pelvis. The movement of the body inside the vehicle is more controlled. Severe injuries are reduced. Another reason why it quickly became a worldwide standard is its simplicity to use. You only need one hand to fasten it. And when there's a sudden impact, it automatically locks so you don't get thrown forward. Over time, various road safety organizations have confirmed that seatbelts greatly help reduce severe injuries and deaths in car accidents, as long as they are used correctly. And even with the increase of modern safety features like airbags and crumple zones, seatbelts remain a basic requirement in all vehicles. Because in the simplest way, it does something important. It keeps people in a safe position in the midst of sudden danger. One click before you travel, a simple step that can change everything in the event of an accident. Number 8, shipping container corner casting. One of the most important parts of global trade that most people hardly notice. Even though we see its effects every day, on every container that passes through the port, there's a small metal structure at each corner. It looks simple, But this is the reason why the movement of products around the world is fast, standardized, and efficient. Before the modern container system, global shipping was very different. Products were unloaded one by one, boxes, sacks, barrels, everything by hand. This was called break bulk shipping. It was slow, expensive, and there was a high risk of damage and loss of cargo. Sometimes, a ship would stay at the port for several days or even weeks before unloading was finished. This is where the game changed when the standardized shipping container system was introduced in the middle of the 20th century, often associated with the engineer Malcolm McLean. But the real key that made this work worldwide was a small component, the corner casting. This is the metal piece attached to every corner of the container. It has a precise shape and holes to fit the twist locks of cranes, trucks, and trains. Because of this, the whole world adopted a single system. Wherever you send a container, the process of lifting, stacking, and transferring is the same. There's no need to unpack the cargo. There's no need to handle the cargo one by one. Direct transfer from ship to truck or train. In the logistics industry, this is a huge change. According to studies on global trade and transport economics, shipping costs have significantly decreased since the containerization system was adopted. Because of the complicated loading and unloading processes, the reduced labor requirements. Its effect is not only on the ports, but also on the entire supply chain, which has changed. Products that used to be distributed only locally can now be made in one country and shipped to the other side of the world faster and more predictably. Modern globalization became possible from electronics, clothing, food, to raw materials. The small metal piece in the corner of the container is the reason why the system became universal. A standardized piece of steel that quietly connected the whole world. Number 7, QR code. One of the simplest looking technologies, but one of the most widely used in the modern digital world. A small square full of black and white patterns, no moving parts, no battery, no electronics in the code itself. But behind its simple appearance, it provides a big solution, the fast connection of the physical world to digital information. Before this became common, barcodes were used for tracking products, but they were limited. They needed to be scanned at the right angle. They could only store a small amount of data, and they easily fail when scratched or partially damaged. In 1994, under Denso, a company affiliated with Toyota, the QR code was created for a practical use, tracking automotive parts on the production line. It wasn't made for social media, payments, or phones. Its purpose was purely industrial at first. The advantage of the QR code was its two-dimensional design. More data can be stored in a small space. And because of its special pattern, it can be read even if it's rotated, the angle isn't perfect, or even if part of it is not clearly printed. It also has built-in error correction, so even if part of the code is damaged, it can still be read correctly. In real-world conditions like in factories, warehouses, and logistics systems, this is more reliable than traditional barcodes. For many years, this was only used in the industry and wasn't really noticed by the public. But everything changed when smartphones arrived. Suddenly, everyone's camera became a universal scanner. With just one scan, you can go straight to a website, payment, menu, or information. This became even more critical during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many countries and businesses used QR codes for contactless transactions, digital menus, and health-related tracking systems. According to various public health and digital policy reports, this was a big help in continuing daily operations while reducing physical contact during lockdowns. One of the reasons why it spread quickly around the world is because its original specification is open. This means it wasn't restricted to a single company or a license that's hard to use. But like any technology, it also has its limitations. It needs a camera and a device to scan. And there's also a risk when using untrusted QR codes, especially if they're used for phishing or malicious links. But even so, it remains one of the most practical digital bridges in the modern world. Because in its simplest form, it's just a square, but it can connect physical objects to digital information in just a second. Quiet, fast, and you barely even notice it. But it's used every day all over the world. Number 6. Reflective Road Stud. At night, roads used to almost disappear. When there wasn't enough light, it was dark, and drivers barely had any guidance. Drivers only relied on headlights, and the painted lines on the road would quickly disappear in rain, fog, or glare. As a result, the risk of accidents was higher, especially on rural roads and poorly lit highways. That's why a simple idea came about. If the road isn't clear to the driver, make it more visible with the vehicle's own lights. This is where the reflective road stud came in, also known as the cat's eye. The concept was developed in the 1930s in the United Kingdom by the inventor Percy Shaw. Its appearance is quite simple, a small device embedded in the road, but inside it is special glass and reflective material that can bounce light from headlights directly back to the driver. This means that instead of the lane markings disappearing in the dark, they suddenly become visible again to the driver. It's like the road gets an outline in the middle of the night. But one of the most important innovations here is not just the reflection, but also the durability. The design of the cat's eye has a rubber housing that gets compressed when a vehicle passes over it. As the tire goes over, it flexes and sort of cleans the surface of the glass. Because of this, even in rain, mud, or dirt, the reflection remains visible. Over time, road studs have come in different colors to give instructions to drivers. White is for lane markings. Red is for warnings or wrong direction. Yellow is for separating lanes or medians. And in some places, blue is used for emergency access routes. Transport safety authorities say reflective road systems improve lane discipline and night driving safety. However, their effectiveness varies by country and conditions, and they can be damaged by heavy vehicles, snowplows, or heavy wear. That's why some areas use painted reflective lines or raised plastic markers instead. But the principle remains the same. Make the road visible through the simple physics of reflection. No sound, no electronics, no signal. Just small rubber dormitory, Roy. But it can change how millions of drivers see the road at night. A simple invention that quietly prevents thousands of accidents every year around the world. Number 5, standardized screw thread. One of the most common things used in the world of engineering and construction, but also one of the most underestimated innovations in the history of the industry. Screws themselves have been used by people for a long time, but the real change came when the way they were made became standardized. Before this, almost every workshop had its own size and design of screws. The threads were different, the spacing was different, and the diameter was different. As a result, the parts were not compatible. A bolt made in one place wouldn't fit a nut made in another factory. This means that even simple repairs became complicated. In the mid-19th century, a British engineer named Joseph Whitworth began developing a standardized screw thread system. Instead of having different sizes, he created a single set of exact measurements for the angle, spacing, and shape of the thread. This is where the concept of interchangeability emerged. Suddenly, it became possible for parts made in different places to fit together without any adjustment. At first glance, this seems like a small detail, but in the industry, this was a big change. Because of this, mass production became possible. Factories were able to make parts that could be used right away in the assembly of machines, vehicles, and equipment. Production became faster. Repairs became easier. Machine performance became more predictable. From railways to shipbuilding, the consistency of fasteners became the foundation of modern industry. Over time, standardization expanded even further. Different systems emerged, such as metric threads and international standards, which are now used all over the world. According to engineering and manufacturing standards organizations, this kind of standardization is also important for safety because it reduces the risk of mechanical failure, such as loose connections or stripped threads that can cause breakdowns in critical systems. In the modern world, almost everything with a physical structure or machinery relies on this concept. In vehicles, bridges, appliances, industrial machines, everything is anchored on the simple idea that the screw and every connection must be compatible. No special effects, no visible innovation to the average person, but its effect is on the entire industrial world. a small decision about size and angle that changed how modern manufacturing works all over the world. Number 4, windshield wiper. A simple part of a car that's often ignored until heavy rain comes. Before this was invented, one of the biggest problems of early vehicles was visibility. When it rains or snows, the car's windshield quickly gets covered. And because the design of early windshields was still flat, the entire front view of the driver would almost become blurred within a few seconds. As a result, many drivers were forced to slow down a lot, stop, or clean the windshield by hand while driving, which was of course dangerous. In 1903, an American inventor named Mary Anderson patented the first manual windshield cleaning device, a rubber blade attached to an arm and controlled from inside the vehicle using a lever. With each movement, water or snow was removed from in front of the driver to restore a clear view of the road. At first, the automotive industry did not immediately accept this. Some manufacturers said that it could distract the driver and that it wasn't necessary yet. At a time when cars were still slow, but as speeds increased and more vehicles filled the roads, one thing became clear. If you can't see the road, no matter how good you are at driving, it's still dangerous. By the 1920s, the system became more advanced and motorized windshield wipers started to appear as a standard feature in cars. This is also where the evolution of the design began. From single blade, it became dual blades, then intermittent wiping systems, and now modern rain sensing technology that works automatically depending on the rain. Its most important role is simple. It restored visibility. It didn't change the road. It didn't change the weather either. But it changed how the driver sees the world in front of him while the vehicle is moving. In modern road safety standards, a functioning windshield wiper system is an important part of vehicle compliance. Because without it, the safety level of a vehicle immediately goes down, especially in adverse weather conditions. It also has limitations. It can't completely remove fog or glare, and it can break or leave smears if it's old or not properly maintained. That's why there are other systems like defoggers and improved glass coatings to help maintain a clear view. But even with new technologies, it remains a core safety feature, because in the most basic way, it does something critical for every trip. It lets you see the road, a simple movement of a rubber blade that makes the difference between a blind trip and a safe arrival. Number 3, wooden shipping pallet. One of the most common things in warehouses and logistics, but also one of the most underappreciated parts of the modern supply chain. A simple flat platform made of wood. It doesn't look special, often just piled up in the corner of the warehouse or simply thought of as something for carrying boxes and goods. But behind its appearance, it solved a big problem in the industry: how to move heavy products quickly, safely, and continuously. Before pallets, almost all handling of goods was manual. Boxes, sacks, crates, each one was carried and moved by people. Slow, exhausting. There are alternatives like plastic and metal pallets, but wood remains dominant because it's cheaper, easy to repair, and widely available. The most interesting thing here is how simple it is. It has no motor, it has no tracking system, it has no automation. It's just a flat platform, but because of the standard it provided, the entire modern logistics system became possible. A piece of wood that quietly became the foundation of global distribution. Number 2, hypodermic needle. One of the smallest tools in medicine, but also one of those with the biggest impact on modern healthcare. A thin metal tube with a sharp tip, and inside, a hollow channel. It looks simple, but in use it changed how diseases are treated, emergency cases are handled, and even how illnesses are prevented around the world. Before modern injections, the ways of giving medicine were limited. Most were taken orally, applied to the skin, or inhaled. This had its problems. Not all medicines are properly absorbed by the body when taken orally. Sometimes they're even destroyed by stomach acid. It takes effect slowly, and in emergency situations, every second counts. This is where the concept of direct injection became a major breakthrough. In the mid-19th century, the idea of using a hollow needle to inject medicine directly under the skin began to emerge. One of the earliest recorded examples was Alexander Wood in 1853, who used morphine injections for pain relief. At the same time, there were French medical researchers who developed syringe systems for more controlled administration of medicine. Over time, these ideas were combined and the syringe and hypodermic needle became standard medical tools. As a result, doctors gained more precise control over dosage. Medicine can be directly administered into the muscle, veins, or under the skin, depending on the need. Pain relief is faster, anesthesia during surgery is more reliable, and emergency treatment became more effective because the delivery of medicine takes only seconds instead of minutes or hours. It also had a major impact on vaccination. Because of the standardized injection method, mass immunization programs around the world became possible, where millions of people can receive vaccines more consistently and more safely compared to earlier methods. According to public health institutions and medical histories, injection technology played a big role in reducing preventable diseases that used to spread quickly in the population. But it also has its limitations. If used incorrectly, it can cause infection or injury. There have also been cases of disease transmission when needles are not properly sterilized or disposed of. That's why strict medical protocols and the development of safety-engineered needles became important. Despite this, it remains a core tool in modern medicine. There are new technologies like needle-free injectors and transdermal patches, but in many cases they still can't beat the combination of speed, precision, and affordability of the traditional needle system. In its simple form, it's a thin metal tube. Modern surgery, pain management, and global vaccination systems became possible. A small instrument that quietly changed the very way lives are saved. Number 1, ballpoint pen. One of the simplest things people use every day, but also one of the most important tools in the history of communication. A small pen, a tip with a tiny metal ball, and an ink system inside. It looks pretty ordinary. But before this became the standard, writing itself wasn't as stable and convenient as it is today. In earlier times, fountain pens were the main tool. They needed to be refilled. You needed the right angle for it to work properly, and often the ink would leak or smudge. There were even times when it wouldn't work properly in cold climates or at high altitudes where the pressure changes. Because of this, problems arose in situations where fast and reliable writing was needed in business, education, engineering, and military operations. This is where a simple but powerful change came in: the ballpoint pen. Its core idea is simple. At the tip of the pen, there's a small metal ball that rotates as you write with it on paper. As the ball rolls, it picks up ink from inside the cartridge and transfers it directly onto the paper. At the same time, the ball also seals the ink reservoir to prevent it from leaking and drying out. In 1938, this was patented by the Hungarian inventor Laszlo Biro, a journalist who noticed that newspaper ink dried quickly and didn't smudge easily, but was too thick for a fountain pen. Instead of changing the pen, he changed the entire ink delivery system. During World War II, this became especially important for the British Royal Air Force, where fountain pens had problems at high altitude because of pressure changes. The ballpoint pen was more stable and more reliable. That's why it became a practical tool for pilots and engineers. After the war, mass production began, and it quickly spread all over the world. Its effect was not a complicated technology revolution, but simple convenience. Writing suddenly became portable, cheaper, more reliable, and usable in almost any environment. You no longer needed special training or maintenance to write. Anyone, anywhere, could record an idea, information, or a document. According to history and communication studies, the ballpoint pen is one of the tools that made mass communication and documentation easier in modern society. Because of its accessibility, it also has its limitations. It's not as expressive as fountain pen ink when it comes to artistic writing. And because it's often disposable, it also has an environmental impact due to waste. But overall, it didn't replace human capability, it just removed the complications in writing. A small steel ball that solved centuries of problems with ink and quietly changed how the world writes, stores, and passes on knowledge.